You're training wrong and you don't even know it. And I don't care how hard you say that you're training in the gym, just because you believe in some of these false beliefs when it comes to training, that doesn't mean that you're actually going ahead and building muscle effectively. And I had most of these beliefs when I first started training. And guess what? Because I went ahead and believed these things, that didn't mean that I actually got bigger. And the first thing with that is actually chasing the burn. And really, what is the burn when you go ahead and do an exercise? Because if you do high repetitions, let's say, you're doing like 50 reps of bicep curls and you feel the burn in your biceps, does that mean that you're building muscle? Well, the answer is no, okay? Because anybody can go ahead and feel the burn during an exercise, but that doesn't mean that you're actually building muscle. Because really, if you go ahead and think about it, what is the burn when you go ahead and do an exercise? It is just lactic acid filling up in the muscles. And basically, that just shows that you're actually doing exercise, okay? Anybody can just go ahead and pick up a 1 to 2 kilogram dumbbell and just do bicep curls all day, and you really, really feel the burn, but that doesn't mean that you're actually building muscle. And don't get me wrong, feeling the burn, feeling mind-muscle connection during an exercise, that's awesome, right? Like for example, you're training chest and you go ahead and feel your chest. That is not a bad thing. And it shows that you're probably doing the exercise correctly. And that's honestly pretty good. But you shouldn't go ahead and judge your whole progress, your whole workout based off how big the burn is during your exercises, right? Because there are certain exercises, especially bigger like compound movements, such as the bench press, like people are benching and, they get stronger and stronger and they actually progress in their physique and in their strength, but they don't actually go ahead and feel the burn during bench press. They don't go ahead and feel this intense burn on the bench press. But that doesn't mean that they're not growing and they're not going ahead and stimulating hypertrophy, okay? So feeling the burn, feeling the mind-muscle connection during an exercise is awesome, but you shouldn't go ahead and judge your whole workout, your whole routine based off, do you go ahead and feel the burn during an exercise? Now, another thing is that people go ahead and judge their workouts based off the feeling of the pump. And feeling the pump after your workout is awesome, okay? It's awesome to go ahead and train in the gym, training hard, and then you go ahead and take off your clothes and everything, you flex in the mirror and you feel this intense pump in your muscles. And that's awesome. And, feeling the pump is great, but going ahead and judging your workouts again based off the pump, that does not indicate how big your muscle growth is, because there will be some days when you, for example, you get a bigger pump and on some other days you don't go ahead and get a bigger pump. And that can happen for multiple reasons, such as your carb intake, how well you go ahead and are hydrated, all that type of stuff, right? And feeling the burn, feeling the pump is great and it is a part of training, but that does not immediately indicate that you're actually building muscle, okay? And feeling the pump is great, but really, what is the pump? The pump is just going ahead and having blood in your muscles. And if you do higher repetitions, you're gonna feel the burn and you're also gonna feel the pump. But that does not mean that you're actually building muscle and you're stimulating muscle growth just because you have a lot of blood inside of the muscle currently for like a couple minutes. That does not indicate that you're actually building muscle. This third thing, it actually kind of hits hard for me because I used to believe this for such a long time. And that was, if you feel sore the next day, that means that you're actually building muscle. Now, I believed this for such a long time, like even when I first started training, I was, working out at home and, there will be days where I wake up and I feel this intense soreness, for example, after doing like a push day. For example, I train chest in my home. I'm doing the push-ups and everything. And I go ahead and I feel the soreness the next day. And, I feel, man, you know what? I trained hard, like I'm building muscle. But there are some days when you go ahead and just wake up and you don't feel sore whatsoever. It's like you didn't even go ahead and train that day. And I honestly kind of have like this low self-esteem then I'm thinking like, man, like, I guess I'm like not training as hard as I thought I was, like I don't feel sore. I'm not waking up with this intense soreness. Now, just because you don't feel the soreness, that also doesn't mean that you're not going ahead and building muscle. Same thing goes with these other reasons, right? Because really, if you're new to the gym and your body is not used to you training and doing resistance training, you're more likely to go ahead and feel sore. And even some beginners, when they start out in the gym, they say, you know what, my muscles hurt so badly the next day, I don't even want to go ahead and train, you know? Really, the soreness just goes away. And for certain people, they feel more sore after the workout. Some people get less sore. And really, that does not indicate muscle growth whatsoever, you know? And especially if you, for example, do more volume on one workout, or you go ahead and add a different type of exercise which you never did, then you're more likely to go ahead and feel sore the next day. But that really just doesn't mean that, like you're building muscle, because really just the soreness is just your body not being used to a certain movement, some sort of certain pattern. And it's okay to feel sore the next day, but if you're feeling this intense soreness, this extreme soreness, which doesn't go away after like 4 or 5 days, then you probably just went ahead and overshot. You basically kind of like overtrained a bit. Your body just like maybe wasn't used to this like intense like volume. Especially this happens when even when you go ahead and take periods off of the gym. Like for example, you take like a whole month off the gym for whatever reason. You come back and you do your normal workout. Yes, you're gonna be more likely to go ahead and feel sore the next day, but that doesn't mean that you went ahead and just suddenly stimulated so much muscle growth. Okay, so we discussed these beliefs that people have, and I used to have, about training and thinking, okay, like if I go ahead and have the burn, if I have a pump after the workout, if I go ahead and feel sore the next day, that immediately means that I'm going ahead and building muscle. Okay, if these things don't immediately go ahead and tell you that, okay, you're training hard, you're building muscle, then what does? What is the real sign of muscle growth? And that is progressive overload, okay? And if you're progressively overloading and you're getting stronger each week, you're doing more reps in the gym, then that is the biggest indication that you're actually going ahead and progressing and you're actually building muscle, right? You don't need to go ahead and progressively overload every single workout, because there will be days when you actually go ahead and wake up, you don't really want to go to the gym, but you still go to the gym and, you're doing your workout and you're actually kind of weaker, or you just go ahead and stick at the same weight, the same rep range, and you're not progressively overloading every single workout. And really, you don't need to progressively overload every single day, every single workout. But if you go ahead and look at your consistent time going to the gym, if it's slowly but steadily increasing, you're doing more reps, you're doing more weights after, weeks and weeks of, training and sticking to your program, then that is the biggest indicator that you're actually, of course, you're getting stronger and you're going to go ahead and build more muscle. And really, if you're going to the gym, you should be focusing on just doing more reps. Or if you go ahead and start doing over like 12, 15 reps, if you're doing over like 15, 20 reps in an exercise, then yeah, you should probably go ahead and increase the weight from anywhere from 1 to 2.5 kilograms or even a little bit more. Even this slight increase in weights, this is actually, a big difference. Like for example, if you were doing like 50 kg for bench press and you did like, for example, 10 reps, and by going ahead and increasing the weight, so you're basically doing like, I don't know, like you're doing 52.5 kg this workout, and you only go ahead and do like 5 reps. If you go ahead and start sticking to this, this set, basically like every single workout, now you're trying to go ahead and do more reps. Now you're trying to go ahead and do 6 reps, this is actually going to go ahead and stimulate a lot of hypertrophy, and you're actually going to go ahead and get stronger, right? The biggest thing when it comes to, progressively overloading is do not make this mistake of also, program hopping, especially if you're serious about training and if you're anything, honestly, like me, you want to go ahead and make it as optimal as you can. Every single workout, every single exercise has to, be perfect. Like if, for example, you're sticking to a program, you're making progress, but even then you kind of think, you know what? What if I go ahead and change this exercise? What if I went ahead and did this and this? What if I do that and that? If I add more volume, if I change this exercise, if I do a different split, no. Honestly, that is a big mistake which people make, and they go ahead and program hop, or basically they go ahead and change their routines too much. They change their exercise selection too much. And by changing your exercise selection every now and then, it is totally fine. But if you want the best sort of progress in the gym, even if the exercises aren't as, 100% perfect, suitable for you, everything, like it's not 100% like scientific optimal for you, by just going ahead and sticking to an exercise, sticking to a routine, a split, everything. And it will go ahead and be easier for you to go ahead and progressively overload. Now, some other mistakes which you could be making when trying to go ahead and progressively overload, the biggest thing is actually by ego lifting, okay? You want to go ahead and, get stronger every single workout. You want to go ahead and do more reps, but please do not make the mistake of actually starting to break form during an exercise, okay? Just to go ahead and squeeze out an extra rep. Yes, you should be training hard. Yes, you should be training close to failure or even to failure every single workout, every single